No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall any person be denied the equal protection of the laws. Section 1, Bill of Rights, 1987 Constitution.
Section 1 recognizes 5 basic rights of man: the right to life, the right to liberty, the right to property, the right to due process, and the right to equal protection. The right to life is the most important human right recognized by our fundamental law. Life, as used by the Constitution, is not confined to its literal meaning of just breathing and living. It means the right of every individual to enjoy the fullness of life, the fullness of life's blessings. It means the right to a good life. It therefore follows that the state must work to secure to each individual within its jurisdiction equal opportunity to share the blessings of development. And provided elsewhere in our Constitution is the concept of social justice, making it an obligation of the state to rationalize and equalize all the economic and political opportunities in order to help and protect the great majority of the marginalized, the poor, the weak, and the defenseless. So that, in the words of the late President Ramon Magsaysay, those who have less in life should have more in law. Let's now talk about the right to liberty. Right to liberty is the right not only against illegal detention, but against any form of personal restraint or servitude. The government is duty-bound to protect the rights and to refrain itself or its agents from engaging in any activity that will unduly restrict a person's liberty or freedom of movement. The right to property. The right to property means the right of every person to acquire and possess any kind of legitimate property. Property does not only refer to tangible things like land, house, car, appliances, jewelry, money, or other tangible objects. It may also include our work and private employment. Public office, however, is not considered as property of the person holding such position, as the concept of public accountability and public trust always is a higher interest over private rights. But a person holding a public position cannot just be dismissed of said position without due process. The Constitution guarantees our enjoyment of this right and our right to work in the pursuit and acquisition of any property we desire to own and possess. The next important right guaranteed in Section 1 is the right to due process. The definition of due process is expounded by Daniel Webster in the Dartmouth College case when he argued that due process is a law that hears before it condemns, which proceeds upon inquiry and renders judgment only after trial. The right to due process has 2 basic aspects. First, the substantive aspect, and second, the procedural aspect. Substantive due process serves as limitation to the law and the rule-making power of the government. This is addressed to the intrinsic validity of the law itself. Firstly, it is required that the law and the rule-making authority must show that the interest of the public in general and not the interest of a particular class is served by the law, and that any rule or law must have a valid purpose. Secondly, to satisfy compliance of substantive due process, it must be shown that the means employed by the law itself is reasonably necessary to accomplish the purpose and not unduly oppressive upon individuals. For example, a law increasing the penalty of prostitution to that of death penalty for the purpose of promoting public morals may have a valid purpose, but obviously does not have valid means, as the penalty of death imposed as a means to carry out the purpose obviously is arbitrary, oppressive, unreasonable, and unconscionable upon human individuals. It is also basic in our jurisprudence, as declared in the case of Tanyada versus Tubera, that publication is an indispensable requirement for the validity of any law, decree, executive order, and regulation. Failure and absence of due publication of any law, rule, regulation, or administrative order is a violation of due process and must necessarily nullify said law or regulation. On the other hand, procedural due process is the right that limits and restricts the adjudicatory power of the courts and quasi-judicial agencies over individuals. Simply, it means that each one of us has the right to be notified on any activity or proceeding that affects us, and the right to be heard and defend our rights before any resolution or ruling affecting our rights and obligations under the law. It also imposes a corollary obligation upon the state, any court, tribunal, agency, body, person, or institution, where any activity or proceeding affecting our rights is pending, to notice and afford us opportunity to an impartial hearing before a neutral judge and adjudicator, before promulgating any action, resolution, or decision. The impartiality and neutrality demanded by law must be apparent, free of any indication or suspicion of bias, to be ascribed as the cold neutrality of an impartial judge. This right is so comprehensive that it even extends even to hearings conducted by schools and academic institutions on issues relating to the rights of its students in the campus. Deprivation of this right will totally annul the proceeding, decision, or resolution over any right of an individual. The last basic right guaranteed by Section 1 is the right to equal protection. Equal protection is the right of every individual to be treated equally before the law. It does not mean, however, that every individual must have the same rights and obligations in every provision of the law. What is assured by this provision is equality before the law, not equality in the law, because the condition also recognizes the fact that not all persons are similarly situated, and for said reason, some must, under the circumstances, be afforded less or more rights or less or more obligations under different situations. For example, for the purpose of discouraging smoking, higher taxes may be imposed on the sale of cigarettes than other basic goods. Another example may be a valid ordinance that prohibits tricycles to operate in highways for the purpose of ensuring public safety. tricycle can be classified in a different class from motor-driven vehicles in the context of traffic safety in highways, but not so in the interior or subdivision roads. Therefore, classification and variance of treatment on rights and obligations of persons and things can still be allowed without violating the rights of equal protection, provided that the following requisites must concur. Number 1, the classification must rest on substantial distinction. Number 2, the distinction is germane to the purpose of the law. Number 3, the distinction must not be limited to existing conditions only. And lastly, when it applies equally to all members of the same class. In other words, our Constitution does not assure absolute equality of rights and obligations of persons and things. It only assures equality among persons similarly situated. In other words, it only assures equality among equals.